All right, everybody, welcome to tonight's show. Oh, this is the Broken Axle. I'm Steve. That's Craig. And over on the left, we've got our guest, Tyler, joining us again. So, tonight's topic talking about the EPA's recent push, which they've been pushing for a little while, but another recent push of theirs about non road vehicles and engines and how basically competition vehicles, non licensed, what I would call non road vehicles, although not in their language, still fall under EPA's definition and are required to comply with all of the EPA's laws about emissions. This has been it's been a push since like 2016, but it's been a recent push again. The EPA has been fining several aftermarket parts manufacturers for selling off-road use only parts in the defense that since they have jurisdiction over everything that was made for the roads, even if it's not used for the roads anymore, that all the parts sold need to be regulated through them. SEMA is pushing a campaign called the Recognizing Protection of Motorsports Act, trying to push a bill allowing people making race cars or other not for public road use cars to be exempt from basically every form of emissions testing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and where the EPA is going with this, and also just the industry in general as we're pushing towards electrification and some other stuff. So where we see this going, Greg? What's up?
I have issues with electrification, anyways. We actually have a podcast on this exact issue. I don't know if it's actually posted yet.
Yeah, it's up. Yeah.
By the time you hear this one, that one will be up. Go check that out for our full thoughts about electrification and the lies that are the future. So the EPA pushing for basically controlling your car parts, race car parts, is nothing new. You know, they've been trying to ping this issue for years and years and years. I find it interesting with the administration change that they're now pushing for it again harder than they have been. And moreover, I think it's also kind of funny that they're stressing so much about literally less than 17% of the U.S. population doing this. You know, there was a big push even with the non-emissions compliant diesels, both on civilian, like on what we would call like highway road vehicles as well as farm vehicles, right? And they pinged up John Deere like heavily for saying, "Hey, your farmers are illegally modifying your tractors."
So go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
That's an important distinction, I think. So this has been around for a while on an individual basis, right? California, CARB-O numbers, and a lot of other states have made it to where if you modify something, the onus is on you as the owner, if you modify something, to either remain compliant or deal with the consequences of being not compliant, depending on your state's emissions laws or whatever. And that made sense to me. I'm not necessarily with emissions, but if you are in a place that has emissions laws, that the staying in compliance with those laws falls on the owner of the vehicle. That makes a lot of sense. The current push is in taking over manufacturers selling parts, making it illegal for them to sell the part at all.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, how many years now have we all been looking at parts that all say for off-road use only, and, you know, basically telling you, hey, if you do this, this is on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been a thing since even the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just it's cherry picking the facts and the stories and using keywords and punchlines to try to get momentum and try to prove to people that, you know, these darn aftermarket modifiers are bane to society. It's no different than what's that musical called? The Music Man, when he comes to town and says, "Oh, pools are dangerous because they still gambling, and gambling makes your kid crooked." It's just exaggerating something that doesn't need to be exaggerated, and it's now starting to not only infringe on a person's rights and freedoms on owning property, but it's also infringing on the free market and saying, "Hey, you as a builder of these parts can't build these parts anymore because we don't want you," and that's contrary to basically the American way.
Right.
Well said.
Yep.
Well said. What's your take, Ty?
I've had an issue with this whole thing since the Clean Air Act came out, which was 2015 now.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And Everybody has known that, like, modifying your vehicle on the street is not technically legal because every state has different laws. Some don't have any that they actually track. And then it all comes down to
South Carolina say what?
South Carolina, Florida, like,
Tennessee. They don't.
Tennessee, like some states just don't care.
Yeah.
Has it got wheels and lights? Send it.
It comes down to, do the police care? Are they going to enforce it? Like, it's like one cop is going to be by the book and say, oh, your car makes more noise than what it did from the factory, so you are illegal, and we're going to go ahead and ticket you, and you can fix it or not, and we'll continue to ticket you. Other cops don't care because they are part of the community, and, it is what it is. This ban that they're talking about now with not being able to convert a streetcar to a purpose-built track vehicle or off-road truck or you name it, not going to be on the street anymore, is just insane because it takes away from
every grassroots
huge
motorsport.
Markets everywhere. Like from grassroots motorsports all the way up even into professional motorsports, because many vehicles in professional motorsports are still
started out as street cars
that have been converted into race cars. And that's going to kill a market, and it's going to kill the entertainment industry portion of it. And I just don't think it's the right move. And, like we talk about the upcoming electrical vehicles, it's going to happen. None of us really want it. None of us car people really want that to happen because it takes away from the excitement of a noisy engine and fire spitting, turbo spooling, supercharged wine greatness.
Dinosaurs into noise.
And they're going to turn into, the silence of speed.
Yeah. Star Trek noises.
But, like, the EPA needs to back off a little bit. I think what they have in place is good enough, and just let us enjoy this for a little bit longer before we all have to have electric vehicles.
So I guess my thing is, once you don't have plates on a car anymore, I feel like it's not the EPA or really anybody's business what happens with that car anymore.
Private freaking property. It's no different than owning a house and then putting a sex dungeon underneath it, right? Like, as long as you're not nailing young kids, like, who the fuck cares what you have going on in your house, right?
Right.
It's literally no different.
A little nut to it, but he's not wrong.
If I want to motorhome swap my 1980s whatever, and it's on my property and it never leaves my fucking property, say I have a ranch out in Texas,
go eat donuts in the backyard, like that's cool.
Why should the EPA fucking care what I do? Do they just want to make more money off of what I am? And like, there's no reason why this should be able to pass in the first place, because if the government follows voting trends or whatever else, it should never pass. It's just the EPA trying to figure out how they can get more money from you. Everyone's starving for money.
A big part of this too has been the push from the EPA for enforcement has been bad, just bad.
Yeah.
Right. They've been trying to push this for a while, but outside of California, they've had very little luck with enforcement. Right. All the companies just said, they put their sticker on that, hey, this is for off-road use only, sign here. And all the gearheads said, cool. Yeah. Noted. And then put the shit on anyway. Yeah. Right or wrong, that's a story for another day. But enforcing it on the individual level just hasn't been effective because a good percentage of the country just doesn't care.
And where do they actually draw the line with what is a street-built vehicle? Like, you have dirt bikes and four-wheelers and go-karts, and that's like the only thing that you can define as something that is strictly built for not road use. Everything else pretty much comes from an intent to use on the street, an intent to drive to and from work. Where do you draw the line?
And then, or you go to the extremes, right? And you have what they have out in India. And Donut Media actually has a really great show on this about, like, what is it like modifying in other countries. But India says that if the manufacturer does not modify it themselves, it's illegal. So even doing something as simple as a wheel swap, I want to put, Mini Cooper wheels on my Honda. it's illegal, and they can impound your car, and it's like, oh, it's bad juju.
So it's kind of weird, right? It's different all around the world, I guess. Over in Europe, you've got TUV. Australia's got what do they call that? Engineering.
Yeah, engineering actually makes a lot of
that
sense.
That one actually, to me, makes a lot more sense the way it is over in Australia, where if you have a bunch of mods, you can still get it approved. You just have to go through a process.
And for those of you who don't know, engineering is like saying, for example, I have a BRZ and I want to put on AP Racing brake calipers, right? In the US, it's brake caliper, doesn't affect emissions. Who fuck cares? But out in Australia, if you want to street drive on this, right, you have to prove that the mods that you're doing either equal or equate to what the car had already had from factory or make it better. And they'll do a simple test or whatever else. And, oh, no, it stops 4 feet shorter. We're going to say, hey, this car is good for that. And now the government can't touch that car because, it's been engineered. And it makes a whole lot of sense, even down to the point of like, I want to throw, more boost in E85 at it, but I still have my emission stuff active and it still works. Like, it makes a whole lot of sense in that regard.
So that's kind of my fault.
As long as you have all the paperwork to back it up.
As long as you have the paperwork. And
I guess that's kind of what the CARB EO setup is.
Yes.
But I don't know.
And this is the other misnomer too. So I'm in California right now. Please get me out. And what's interesting is that they actually have. It's not very well known, and it's very time consuming and it requires a lot of patience and a whole lot of running around. But you can actually do California EO compliant engine swaps to your vehicle. Now there are certain regulations and guidelines. The most common ones, of course, are LS swaps. And if a Chevy had a V8, you could swap in an LS to replace a small block, and blah blah blah. But that actually goes even further now. You can have SR20 swaps, 240SXs out here in California, EO compliant. It's just when you make, the process painful and time consuming. I even talked to one of the deputies down here about doing, because like on my truck, I upgraded from a 4.8 to a 6.0. It's not even worth reporting on. And he said that the state doesn't even really care at the end of the day what you did, as long as you're making the attempt to make it right. There's not even a time limit. So technically speaking, I have to get smog next year, and I can show them paperwork that the engine has an updated vehicle, and I'm in the process of getting it registered, and then the smog gets waived and registered gets renewed. Like the rules are so loose out here, and it even goes to the point of what does the EPA want to infringe even more upon that? Like California gave us the option to modify our vehicles, and that's still not good enough.
So my only gripe, and this is purely from what I've heard from people out in Cali. I've never lived out there, never dealt with their garbage. Don't plan on it. Is
help me.
So like doing late model engine swaps into older stuff, you can't go part way better.
Yes.
Right. So take like a piece of whatever the fuck 70s iron you want, with probably some sort of god awful emissions number, and even. Insert random fuel injected LS whatever with some aftermarket cats on it. It's got to be better. Like, just tech wise and everything else, it's better. But because it doesn't have all of the stuff that went with the engine, the newer stuff that came with the newer engine, it still winds up failing emissions.
Right.
Because if you do like a late model engine swap, you have to have vapor recovery, charcoal can, EGR, PCV, all that jazz. Everything. So you can't be a little better than like a 70 small block puking.
Yeah, but that only matters for the initial inspection for the EO registration. Once that's done, then it's just a standard smog.
Right, but you get what I'm saying. Like if you take a dude that slapped like a 5.3 truck motor into where there used to be a puking 350, it's got to be better than the 350, but it's not better enough.
Yeah, and that's kind of also like the downfall too, is that like in order to get the swap completed, you need to go to such great lengths to get everything converted over and make it better. But even a 5.3 with no cats and a street tune is still going to run cleaner than a small block,
right?
Period. And so like at what point do you have to go to the extremes? And California doesn't have guidelines because they were the ones who made the whole thing in the first place. And so they just said, we want everything cut and dry. And really what it is, it's non-car people trying to make regulation on car stuff without doing any sort of research and impact analysis. And I think that's what EPA is doing.
To me, that's where it doesn't make sense, right? Because like that swap we just talked about, a Regal or something would fail smog, but that same Regal with like, a 305 with one of those half electronic carburetor setups that just runs like straight garbage
And you could smell the gasoline
and smells
coming
like
from it.
death, will
Yeah.
absolutely pass emissions.
Yeah.
Well, the
'Cause it only
difference
has to-
there is
It only has to pass
It-
emissions for the year it was made.
Yeah.
right. And it falls into the issue of like any of the scientists that they throw into it don't actually know what they're talking about. They don't know the benefits of tuning vehicles, because generally when you tune a vehicle, you are using less fuel. Your emissions is actually lower. I mean, granted, if you're still running cats. If you're not running cats, then
Turbos
it is
are
what it is.
Even then, though, I don't know if it's any worse. 'Cause
Right.
look at, I know there's that whole deal out in Cali now where you can't run aftermarket cats.
Eh,
Virginia, it's sketchy too, because if it doesn't look like the factory cat, they can still hit you for it as not having cats.
Right. But you got to feel like even like a high flow Magnaflow cat or something has got to be better than some 80s hunk of cat.
Right.
Like it just has to be.
There is a movement out here because of that. It's more drawn out. Basically, if you can take the paperwork that you pass a sniffer and it's better than the factory cat is, then they'll allow it. But it's not. It's a case by case basis. It's not a blanket rule anymore.
Right.
To me, that's where we should be anyway.
Well, that's going back to engineering, right? You're engineering the thing, so it's like,
Right.
hey, a high flow cat that passes less NOx than the factory cat did. Like, why can't I run E85 in 30 degrees of timing? Like,
Right.
Well, that's my thing. Like that should be where we're at anyway. If you're going to do the emissions thing, it should just be literally a sniffer test. And either it's better or worse than year of manufacture.
Yeah.
Meaning if you're rolling like a 1978 Regal, you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want because the law from back then would have been incredibly lax.
Yeah, near zero.
Yeah. It's not actually fogging liquid fuel out of the tailpipes, so
Yeah.
that's probably going to be okay.
I think if the U.S. implemented some form of what the Australians do with the engineering,
I think that's why a lot of people take the shot and just run illegal because it's such a gigantic question mark about how to do it legit.
And when you go to those shops to get, state inspection, insert state,
Yeah.
it's up to that inspector. How lenient are they or how strict are they? Some don't
I hear
care
that shit
and
all
they
the
just
time.
want to get, oh, you paid for the inspection? Cool, here's your sticker. Is it going to catch on fire down the, as soon as you pull out of the shop? I'm probably not going to pass that, but anything outside of that, go for it.
And that was a question that came up all the time in Connecticut, and I don't condone or endorse this sort of thing, but it's this way everywhere that has inspections. Everybody asks about, hey, where's the shops at that'll, a little extra 20 here and there, maybe slip a six-pack in the passenger seat.
And the inspection happens.
And the inspection's going to be okay.
And guess what? The world's not on fire because of it.
Right. Like this thing happened. Everywhere with inspections, this is happening.
Yep.
All right, for all manner of things, right? It might be what Craig was just talking about. You've got some aftermarket high flow cats that don't look like factory cats, so you need somebody to not look super close up to, don't have cats.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, though, some states' inspections, like I passed, I think the statute of limitations is up on this. I allegedly passed emissions in Virginia with no cats on anything because they don't actually do a sniff test. They just do an OBD2 check.
I have definitely not done the same thing before.
Allegedly.
Y'all a bunch of crooks.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never done that.
You're the one living in California. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying it can't fail. It can't fail if it doesn't have the mill light actually programmed into the ECU anymore.
Look, all I'm saying is the intake on my WRX is the only carb certified intake on the market.
But like some stuff I don't understand. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Why the EO thing? Right? Manufacturers have to go through this huge pain in the ass to get the EO stickers.
Well,
it just
so
doesn't
the
have
EO
to be
stickers,
that way.
It's a money thing.
Yeah,
it's all about
stickers. Turned out to actually being a selling point now, right? If now my product can be sold in California, which now means it's 50 state legal compliant, I now have one leg up on some sorry, weapon R, but like a weapon R intake from Singapore, right?
Yeah, because
Kind
you
of.
have that market now that nobody else can sell in legally.
Kind of, sort of.
Or it's not nobody. It's not no one else. Is that you've already done the legwork to make sure your stuff's compliant, like air raid and what is it? Airflow technology, airflow engineering, AFE.
It's compliant in quotation marks. It's compliant with these. What I think we could agree on is ridiculous restrictions.
Or 98%. You should be concerned about is that when you have a government now that can make policy and rule and not care about the people that it's affecting, then what's to stop them from going on the next thing? You know, it's
That's
like saying, "Oh, we're going to make baseball illegal," and so all the ball players out there, sorry, no, it's like no, we got to figure out why baseball is illegal in the first place. Oh, maybe the balls are hitting their heads too hard. Well, it's implement helmets. They give them a venue to allow it to exist, and we see this day to day with even so. It was a bad example, but even football, right? Football back in the 90s was almost on the brink of going away, and it was the NFL and I think Toyota of all places came together and said we need to make it safer for our ball players, or else this is going to be an illegal sport. So they designed a new helmet, and that new helmet actually, I think, spurred also the design of the Hans device, which went back to motorsports. Which is awesome. One of the two, it happened one way or the other. But when you get the EPA who comes down and says, "Hey, all aftermarket parts are now illegal. You can no longer turn a personally operated vehicle that was registered in the state into a race car," you're taking away a hobby, you're taking away culture, you're taking away history, you're taking away even the ability to create something better than already exists. And you're actually kind of undercutting the whole interest into the group itself. I don't know. And then we go back to electric cars, right? If electric cars are going to be so dang popular here in the future, then why do you care about emissions on a car that doesn't matter? Again, you're affecting 5% of the population to make the other 95 feel better about themselves.
Let me put on my tinfoil hat for a second.
Oh boy, where is it?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think there may be some truth to that we're pushing making fun gasoline-powered cars more difficult in order to artificially increase demand for electric cars.
Right.
I
completely agree with that. And it comes down to money. And it doesn't come down to what's better for the environment, because if you do any amount of research into the production of batteries for the electric cars, the amount of shit that is released for that is significantly higher than the lifetime of any gas vehicle, period.
Check out the episode Rise of the EV and Death of Hot Rods.
Yeah.
Where me and Craig talk about that exact issue.
And we even talked about the other issue, which is more stateside based. So battery, was it Lithuania or some African country has all the lithium mines in the world or whatever else.
Yeah.
And then the processing of that also impacts the economy. But not only that, but power production itself. Everyone's so hell-bent on this green energy to supplement EVs. I guess before I go into a tangent, check out the podcast because we talk about that. But it just does not exist. So you got to wonder who's upstairs knocking on these guys' doors trying to make them pass legislation that's impacting us, the common folk. And then now it's forcing a change that doesn't need to be made.
I mean, as much as I enjoy some of his antics, I feel like, it's guys like Elon Musk that are driving this. And it's not necessarily him in particular, but guys like him that have a huge stake in electric vehicles.
I guess
they're gonna drive that type of legislation because it supports their business.
I gotta come to Elon's defense here. He's come on record a couple of times saying that EVs didn't need to be on the market until they were competitive without a subsidy. If they're not competitive, they're just not competitive.
Well, but I believe when he said that this massive global push for EVs wasn't really a thing.
It was not.
But with what is it, London, and as soon as 2025
they're
only going to allow EVs, period. With major cities like that pushing for it, and governments driving to have EVs being only vehicles on the road,
I'm not sure.
There's kind of a big business push behind it.
So when he was pushing for that was when the Tesla Model S was first really becoming a thing. And his argument was that it should be competitive with the Mercedes S-Class. And he's kind of right. At that point, they were in the, I don't know, call it $70,000 to $80,000 range. And that $7,000 tax credit really, it just wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anybody that's buying an S-Class or any other new $75,000 luxury car,
isn't really blinking an eye at that.
yeah, like that tax credit's just, it's a cool bonus, but that's not going to make their car buying decision for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if they were going to buy a Benz and they're like, oh, it's $7,000 more expensive, well, I'm still going to buy a Benz. Like,
right. At that time, it's more of the curb appeal of, oh, I own an electric vehicle.
That too. I mean, they were making the argument that they were, in fact, smoother and everything else. Smoother, quieter, more refined. I don't know if they actually were, but that was their argument. And yeah, maybe. I don't know. They're definitely faster. How long did Tesla have the four-door sedan record?
Yeah.
Hell, they may still have it. I don't know.
I think the Taycan S.
I think the Taycan Turbo
Took it
S
away,
or whatever
finally.
they call
The Turbo S that doesn't have a turbo.
First off,
turbo with no turbo.
Tangent here. Porsche, stop putting turbo labels on things that don't even use gasoline. All right? Just stop.
Porsche's better
I
than
mean,
that.
if you're going to put turbo on it, at least install a turbo on the car somewhere, whether it functions or not.
Damn it. If you're going to put turbo on it, I want a boost gauge and a little green button somewhere that says boost. Make this like Indy.
And it makes a psh sound.
Right? I'm just saying.
So
That's not the
I
first
think-
time. I mean, the last couple of years, Porsche had turbos on all the 911s. Both the base 911 and the 911 Turbo were actually turbocharged. So,
back when they had the Subaru
Right.
engine.
yeah, naming stupidity.
Who said that? Getting back on track here,
Yeah.
I think we are all in agreement here that this underlines a bigger issue, and they're giving us kind of a no. They're giving us a no-win option, even if they implement this. And so the best thing that we can recommend to you as fellow car enthusiasts from multiple different backgrounds, right? We have a guy who likes to do long smoky burnouts, and we have a guy who likes to do not only sim racing, but actually put his time and money into track days and events. And you got guys like me who are just grassroots autocrossers and hobbyists and whatnot.
Plays with cones.
Yeah, plays with parking lot cones. I'm a tarmac fairy. Get out there, find your local state representative, Google the RPM Act, and then put in your state. I've already put in my, little Hail Mary to the local government saying, hey, I don't want this to pass. And I've already signed the petition for it to find the SEMA's page and then sign it and make your voice known. There's more than 10 million of us nationwide who are all impacted by this to some degree and don't want this to pass. And that's the best thing that we can offer to you.
For sure. If you, you may not have a race car now, but like race cars are such a huge part of America. We normally try to stay away from. Go ahead.
It's like if you don't own a race car, you've definitely at some point in your life watched them or know somebody that is very interested in them or owns them themselves, and it's definitely something worth supporting.
Yeah, we normally don't do political stuff on the channel, and nor do I intend to start doing political stuff on the channel at any point. But I felt like this was something that affects literally all of us. I know I'm older than some of the guys in here, but chopping the mufflers off of a 305 and flipping the air filter upside down, this stuff has been going on for a long time, and we need to keep it alive.
Well, you guys remember when the first race was held, right?
The second Model T came off the line.
Second car came off the
production line. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Competitive blood, and it's a part of U.S. history. And not only that, but the U.S. of all the nations has an insane love for these vehicles. And I don't mean to step on the Italians' toes too, because they have passion too. But taking something that exists and making it your own via creative outlet mechanically, it's part of what the United States is. And not only that, but once you make it better, you can turn around and bring it back to the OEs and say, hey, why can't we have this? And many times that's how a person kind of gets into the world of the OE manufacturers.
Yeah, a lot of good manufacturers have made a lot of upgrades that way, from looking to see what people are doing with their cars in the aftermarket and then being like, hey, why aren't we doing this from the factory?
I mean,
that became a thing.
I think one of the biggest supporters of that is if you look at Subaru,
Yeah.
And I may be biased here because I'm a huge fan of Subaru and always have been, but their support of their community is just outrageous. I mean, they have the ambassadors program where they have people like to speak for their brand, and they support various types of racing. They support all the different types of communities, whether it's, those people going to the grocery store and picking up their groceries for the week, or the guys taking them out camping and off-roading and to the track and to the autocross and to the local, car meets. It doesn't matter. They stand behind their customers, and, a lot of that will go away if the EPA has their way with this. And it's, as an American, we all strive for some form of individuality, and car people, we do it through our vehicles. And if we can't have that anymore, then, how are we going to display ourselves?
Yeah, right. It's just not as awesome when you're like, oh, I bought the 75 kilowatt battery instead of the 85.
Oh, you monster,
No.
you.
Yeah, right. Like, sure, your car's faster because you bought the slightly faster model. Like that's
Ooh,
not
are you
cool.
getting?
No one
You're getting
cares.
into the built not bought battle.
It's
It's not even that.
It's not even that. It's just
that's not even the same level.
Says the
Yeah.
guy who bought a 500 horsepower Mustang.
It's like, oh, I bought a Mustang GT with the track pack, so I have,
feeling a lot of
a red
haterade here.
seatbelt.
Feeling a lot of haterade here.
There's no hate at the Mustangs. I enjoy them. Probably not as much as the next guy, but still.
This is my second Mustang. Well, third, I guess, technically, but I like to do burnouts, right? What do you want from me?
I have my own personal reasons for not owning a Mustang, but,
I like burnouts and bald eagles in America, all right?
I like four-wheel drive burnouts.
That's fair. Subarus also like transmissions.
This is very true.
Well, you guys are just childish at this point.
Yeah, was this a surprise to anyone? I never claimed that we were adults or even mostly grown up. But in all seriousness, like, this is a big thing. I do hope that we get some traction on this as a group, not necessarily for the channel. That's whatever. But as a car people, that we get some traction on this. The Cali thing has been spreading to more and more places as far as emissions being a thing, more and more places. And I don't think we can stop that. And I don't really think that's actually that big of a deal. Having to pass emissions tests every year, it's eventually going to be a thing, and that's whatever. But, the EPA going after the manufacturers, I think it's just wrong. Like, it's the wrong way to go about it, and it's just out of line. It should absolutely be if they want to go after individuals that put off-road parts on cars that still have license plates, okay, that's a thing. I don't necessarily agree, but I'm not going to try and stop that. I mean, it's wrong. You're doing it. You get taught. You pay your ticket. Whatever. But telling companies they can't make parts, that's just wrong.
And if you're so inclined to do a little bit more reading on this too, the federal government also actually has a division for the rights of mankind in the U.S. to sell stuff. It's the Federal Trade Commission, right? It's a small division nowadays that's kind of overlooked now in the light of the EPA and the FDA and some of these other groups. But they definitely have votes and sways and ideas and movements in order to keep your right as a consumer in the market. And I feel like this is a prime opportunity to kind of re-empower them too. So not only do your state senators or whatever else will start looking to the FTC and seeing how they can help us too.
Right on. That said, that's been it for tonight. Thanks for everybody for taking a listen to this. Like Greg said, hit up your local, state, community, whatever. SEMA will have a thing on the page to get you to the right people and make sure you send an email, send a letter, whatever you want to do. Talk to your local representatives. Other than that, have a good night, everybody. And don't forget to go break some knuckles.
Save me.